Judiciary Subcommittee will come to order. I'm sorry. Full committee of the Judiciary Committee will come to order. All here vote aye, all opposed no. All in favor, all who are here vote aye, all who are not here. Do we have a quorum?
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. I'm going to leave my proxy to Senator Deeds because I have to go to another committee.
Okay, we're going to start off by hearing the Civil Law Subcommittee report from Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the report from the Civil Laws Subcommittee. We met on Monday afternoon, January 31st. We laughed, we cried, we ran the gamut of emotions, and we took up about 18 bills, which I'm going to go through right now. Okay. We started with Senate Bill 486, which was Senator McClellan, which was the workplace situation, the workplace violence prevention, which we adopted a substitute which dramatically scaled it back to a definitional issue in 19.2. Do we need to distribute that substitute, or how do you want to do that? It's online.
Okay, the substitute's
We
online.
also have paper copies for.
Do I have a motion to adopt the substitute?
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adopting the substitute?
Aye.
Okay, you will recall that last week we had pretty extensive testimony about this
Right.
bill. The substitute's online, it's available in paper. You can see that it's very much scaled back from what we had before.
So basically, the substitute simply changes the definition of petitioner under 19.2-152.7:1, and that's really the only change it makes. And with that substitute, we recommended reporting on a vote of 7-0, and I so move.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Miss,
Senator, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McDougal.
I just wanted to be clear. This is under 19.2-152.9 still allows for ex parte hearing on protective order, correct? So this is an employer getting an ex parte protective order against an individual.
It's my understanding that can happen. What this substitute does is it changes in 19.2-157.7:1 changes the term petitioner to include an employer whose employees have been hassled or.
Mr. Chairman,
Wait,
Senator
Mr. Chair.
McDougal.
I guess with the substitute, because I just seen it now, so the employer, if it's an LLC, who from the LLC, is the registered agent or authorized agent, do they have to have any actual knowledge when they're presenting this information, ex parte hearing to a judge?
Well, I mean, that's going to be up to the judge, but it seems to me you'd have a representative that'd have to testify with some type of firsthand knowledge to get an injunction or a protective order. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
So the bill does not change any of the findings that have to be made to issue a protective order. All it says is that a petitioner who is an employer whose employee has been subject to an act of violence, force, or threat in connection with his employment can be a petitioner. But everything else about how you get that protective order stays the same.
No.
Mr. Chair, I think to be candid, I think the objection that was raised by Senator McDougal was the same one we had in subcommittee, that this is typically for domestic violence situations, and by adding an employer, we are expanding it a bit. I still believe it has all the same protections. Again, you'd still have to show that there's an imminent harm and everything else. So I think at the end of the day, it's just a definitional issue whether or not you're going to allow an employer, if they are facing this situation in the workplace, to have the standing.
Okay, this bill's been through subcommittee and had extensive hearing, I guess in its original form in the full committee and had a hearing in the subcommittee. There's been a motion to report that's been seconded.
Mr. Chairman, it needs to go to finance.
The motion needs to be to report and re-refer to
So I'll
finance.
amend my motion, report and refer to finance.
Okay, that motion's been seconded. Please open the roll.
Ayes 10, noes 0, abstentions 1.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Senator Peterson. Do you have another bill?
Yes, I'm going to get to these. The next two are going to be taken together. It's Senate Bill 230 from Senator Hanger, who rolled his bill into Senate Bill 555.
I think it's a recorded vote. Are you moving to roll 230?
So I moved to roll 230 into 555. I so
And
moved.
list Mr. Senator Hanger as a chief co-patron.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, that motion's been made and seconded. It's a recorded vote. All in favor of, we're moving 230 into 555, rolling in.
Okay, and that now takes us to 555, and this one was,
Senator Lucas's proxy.
Yes, I just gave it to Senator.
Senator McClellan. Ayes 11, no 0.
Did John vote for it in subcommittee?
okay.
Is it?
All right, well, can I make my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the dram shop liability bills, which there's been, obviously, we had a very lengthy hearing and some very riveting and emotional testimony, which I think it was really hard for us to digest. We also heard from really the industry and the restaurant association, who, needless to say, were not in favor of this. What this bill would do would be to extend liability to retail businesses that sell alcohol to a minor who is visibly intoxicated, and then they would be civilly liable for any injuries. I think Senator Surville pointed out that this is the case in most states, and so that they have this on the retail side. I think the argument is they're already very strictly regulated by ABC. They would lose their license if they sell to somebody knowingly underage. And because it creates a jury issue by virtue of the factor of knowledge, it really becomes impossible to demur or move to dismiss a case like this. You have to go to trial and go to a jury, and so it really puts them under extreme insurance costs.
I want to ask a question, then
Yeah.
Senator Morrissey's got something. Senator Surville offered an amendment in subcommittee. Was that amendment adopted? Do you remember that? It was not.
Remind me what it was.
It was
No, it's
developed up
simplified.
beyond more than retailers, to everybody.
I think that was rejected.
No, that's not exactly, Mr. Chairman.
Hanger's original bill.
Okay.
I offered an amendment to simplify the language, and when Senator Obenschein pointed out to me that I didn't include retailers, I said I can add one word to fix that, and then the committee still didn't like it.
Okay. Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the patron. Senator Peterson, it's clear that if a retail restaurant sells alcohol to a minor who they know is a minor, that they will lose their license. Is it equally clear that if a retail establishment sells alcohol to somebody who they visibly see is intoxicated, that they would similarly lose their license?
I think the short answer to that is yes. I know and I've done ABC practice. ABC rules prohibit selling to someone who's visibly intoxicated, and that can certainly be a basis for losing your license. It's not often as easy as underage sales, because underage sales, someone's either 21 or they're not. But it is a violation of ABC practices to sell to someone visibly intoxicated.
Mr. Chairman.
Final question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Morrissey's got.
It's not my bill, by the way. It's open.
I know, since it was directed to the patron, I
He
was
asked
hoping
me.
I know.
Okay.
I was a little confused.
I defer, Mr.
It was
Chairman.
an ambiguous question, but I would point out that that civil liability would not simply attach for one of those two violations. It would not attach if the retail establishment merely sold to an underage patron. It would not attach if they merely sold to an intoxicated patron. This is, I don't know how I could have drawn this more tightly and offered a more restrictive liability scheme. It's necessary to show by clear and convincing evidence that the licensee sold to a visibly intoxicated minor, and they can show that they used good faith efforts to not do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm a yes.
Senator Peterson.
My grandmother got.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with anything my colleague says. I think we have been pretty clear in Virginia, we're not going to have dram shop liability, and typically we don't have liability for the sale of a legal product. And so I think we have an ABC that does a great job of keeping check on this. I realized that we had an incident in, was it Augusta County? This bill would not save that person's life, to be blunt. So
Your subcommittee did not make a recommendation.
we deadlocked 4-4. I was one of the no votes, so I will move to pass the bill by indefinitely.
Is there a second? Okay, is there a substitute motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Serville.
I'd move to report.
And second.
Speaking to that.
Okay, the substitute motion takes precedence. If you vote green, you're for
Can I
reporting the
speak to it?
bill. That's right.
Can I speak to it?
Senator Serville.
Thanks, Mr. I mean, this is a 4-4 vote, so it's a little unusual coming out of sub, so I understand why we're taking a little more time on it, but, dram shop liability is the law in most of the country, as Senator Peterson pointed out. Every state touching Virginia has dram shop except Maryland. So we're not.
Maryland has it.
Yeah, right. Oh, it does now? Oh, the map I was looking at didn't show Maryland, but in any event, so this isn't a new turf. The insurance companies know how to deal with it, and change is difficult. But this bill could not be like smaller, a smaller dram shop liability. I'm not sure there's anything you can do to make it even narrower. And as I said in subcommittee, my great-grandmother was killed in 1936 by a drunk driver in South Carolina. And, people have been dying for years for this. And I think anything we can do to incentivize conduct better for people to behave, we ought to do it.
If you vote green, you're for reporting the bill.
Ayes 4, 10, noes 10, abstention 0.
Okay, the bill does not report. You have another bill, Senator Peterson.
Yes, sir. I have Senate Bill 666, which is my bill and is potentially a sign of the apocalypse because it came out 8-0 from the subcommittee. I do have a substitute on that, if I could have that distributed, please. And just briefly, this is a bill that deals with eminent domain and just makes the section on lost profits a little bit easier to understand. It does not change the lost access rule. I know VDOT had concerns about that. It does keep the rule on lost profits that a business that's impacted by a condemnation can recover 3 years of lost profits. But rather than have that strictly based on tax returns, it gives leeway to small businesses, LLCs, that oftentimes won't report any taxable income because they're paying themselves a salary, and it gives them some flexibility to show that to the fact finder. Other than that, I think it pretty much keeps the, it cuts out also what I considered some supercilious language in the statute itself.
Do I have a motion on the substitute?
Yes. Move we adopt the substitute.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor of adopting the substitute?
Aye. But other than apart from that, the cleanup on the lost profits language, I think we otherwise kept the statute generally the same, and it was reported on a vote of 8-0, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, this also needs to go to finance.
Okay, that needs to, the
Okay.
motion is to report and re-refer to finance.
So there's a chance of adding back in the entrance provision in finance?
Well, get me out of the Senate, we'll talk in the House, okay?
Okay. This bill was fully heard in the subcommittee.
Yes, it was.
So open the roll. The green vote is to vote to report and re-refer to finance.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Okay, you've got one more bill, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Senate Bill 964 was Senator Obenshain's bill on eminent domain, and that was also a substitute, and if we could have that circulated, 694.
6-9.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute?
All right.
Okay, the substitute's before you. Senator Peterson.
This had to do, I believe, with drawdown petitions. Do I have that correct? It had to do with a lot of things.
Senator Obenshain can make the report.
Why don't you make the summary, Senator Obenshain? I'm sorry.
I will gladly endeavor to do so. first included provisions dealing with payments into court. They would be required to be placed in interest-bearing accounts. Second, it updates the language dealing with the cost allowance for surveys. Third, it standardizes the form for reports of title. It also requires a condemnor to notify the condemnee of the termination of the temporary construction easement. And it also deals with, prohibits delays in seeking permits that would have increased the value to the condemnee of the property, unfairly depressing the value of the property, and clarifies the procedure that a property owner can follow in the event that the condemnor files the condemnation and sits on it, does not push it forward. And we made it clear that the applicable provisions do not apply to utilities. They apply primarily to road projects and municipal and other governmental takes.
Okay.
And I will simply, I think that's the summary, and we recommended reporting on a vote of 8-0, recommended reporting the substitute.
Okay, is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? A green vote is a vote to report the bill, and it doesn't have to go to finance, right? Correct. Okay. A green vote is a vote to report the bill.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, the bill's reported. Thank you so much, Senator Peterson. Now we're going to go to the non-committee patrons. The first, well, Senator Steph, you're the first one on the list. I guess Senator Vogel's the first one on the list. She's not here. Senator Donovan, second. She's not here. So Senator Steph.
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having me today. So we're going to first take up Senate Bill 592.
Okay.
592 refers to Operation Ceasefire, defining what group violence intervention is, setting up the fund, et cetera. So let me talk to you a little bit about this. Oh, first of all, I'd like to, we have a substitute.
Okay, and you have witnesses, is that right?
I do, yes, sir.
Okay, well, what I'll do is, like, how many people do you have?
I think we've got three to four to talk, maybe 5, but somewhere in that. Some of them are going to be very, very quick.
Okay.
I have 1 or 2 that'll explain the difference between the two bills.
Okay, so, but because your bill's similar, but it's in conflict with Senator McClellan's bill.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay.
Ours is a bottom-up approach, yours is a top-down approach.
Okay, well, we're going to take no more than 5 minutes on each side, okay?
Mr. Chairman, that's fine.
Okay. You've got a substitute. Do I have a motion on the substitute? That's before you. Okay, a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Okay. The substitute's before you for 592, Senator Steph.
Mr. Chairman, what Operation Ceasefire does here in Virginia, and I'll start by saying Republicans and Democrats, we share the same goal, to end violence in our communities. Every lost life is a tragedy. This program is simple. It involves community engagement, law enforcement, social service providers, nonprofits, school resource officers, prosecutors, all with cross-jurisdictional communications and a willingness to work as a team. Mr. Chairman, what they do is they focus on the neighborhoods and the areas where the crime is the highest and where these issues are a problem. The team that we're talking about here is the same team working with the same proven methodologies that in Richmond from 2004 to 2008 reduced homicides from 95 in 2004 to 32 in 2008. Same methodologies used in Boston and in Los Angeles. And Boston showed a 25% decrease in the monthly number of citywide gun assaults, 44% decrease in the number of youth gun assaults, 63% reduction in youth homicides. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bottoms-up approach has proven it works, and we want to continue with this. There's $5 million put in the budget this year and $5 million put in the budget next year. We have some folks that want to speak further to this bill, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to turn it over to them at this point in time.
Okay, you've got 5 minutes total for the whole, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator DeSteph. Mr. Chairman, my name is Maggie Cleary. I'm the Deputy Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. I'm going to speak very briefly, since we only have 5 minutes, on the differences between these bills. As Senator DeSteph so eloquently put it, this is the difference between a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. What we believe is that the best way to combat crime is by getting opinions and suggestions from people within the community where the crime is occurring. The solution is not to have these communities be told by bureaucrats how to combat crime in a community where they can't even name a street. The best course of action is to take people who know exactly the homes, the streets, the areas specifically where they live, where the problems are, and how to work together to solve those problems and in order to combat violent crime. That's what we believe the best approach is here. That's why we believe that this bill is the best bill. I'm speaking on behalf of the administration today. This is one of Governor Youngkin's day one plan agenda bills. This is part of one of his legislative priorities. What I also wanted to add too, which is important, is that SB 487 focuses more on firearms specifically. What this bill does is that it combats violent crime outside of firearms. As the members of this committee know, not all violence comes specifically from firearms. In fact, much violence in these communities comes apart from firearms, and this combats violence more broadly. I'll stop there, and I'll defer the rest of my time to Mark Farrow from the AG's office.
Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you for your time. A few other quick differences that I'd like to mention. My name is Mark Farrow. I've worked for the last 5 attorney generals. I've implemented and managed several of these funds and programs. This will be another opportunity for us to make a difference in crime throughout the Commonwealth. One important thing to mention is that the Operation Ceasefire has evolved through the National Network of Safe Communities into group violence intervention, which includes all of the best practices that are in Senator McClellan's bill. Another thing I'd like to point out is even though we had great success in those 4 years, as recently noted in the news, even here in Richmond, we've seen the highest number of people shot. We took 781 guns off the street. That's just in this city alone. We're taking hundreds of guns off of every one of the streets in your districts as well, from criminals who are using them. And what better way to reduce crime, suicides, rapes with a firearm, manslaughter, all of these things, than to implement a program like this that works from the community up and not only reduces crime with a firearm, but also those violent crimes without. Some of the other key differences, since we have a few minutes to point out, obviously is the change from the Department of Criminal Justice Services to the Attorney General's office, which the Secretary's office supports, and the Department of Criminal Justice is here as well, and believe that they have no issue with it and can speak to that. There's also a clearinghouse mentioned in the other bill. There's no need for a clearinghouse. There's crimesolutions.com. The National Justice Institute for Justice has had a clearinghouse for decades. It's been studying the programs that are done here in Virginia and throughout the nation and has rated them. And our program is rated with an A and the ceasefire with an A+. There's several other programs that we'll be implementing within that group as well. So those are the main differences. There is a research component that's mentioned in the other bill. One thing to mention along with that is we have the Criminal Justice Research Center here in Virginia that conducts studies, produces reports, provides research, statistical assistance to a wide range of criminal justice agencies, including the Attorney General's office upon request, and we work really closely with them to get that done.
Okay, thanks very much. Why don't, since this is really I don't know that we're going to have people against one approach or the other. We're going to have people for different approaches. Senator DeSteph has a bill, Senator McClellan has a bill. Why don't we let Senator McClellan present her bill, and then we'll have people in favor of that approach. 5 minutes for people that are in favor of that approach. Senator McClellan, your bill is
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
487, is that correct?
487. First of all, I take issue with the fact of saying that this is a tops-down approach. It is not. Senate Bill 487 is a bill that would allow DCJS, who is the current fiscal agent for federal funding from the Department of Justice for violence prevention programs, to be the lead center, the lead agency through the creation of this center, which if the committee wants to broaden it beyond gun violence, happy to do so. But I think even the Senator Steff's bill and the presentation focused on gun violence. But again, if the committees wants to broaden this beyond just gun violence, happy to do so. What this bill would do is have this new center serve as the Commonwealth's primary resource for research, best practices, and strategies for the implementation of firearm violence prevention, including street outreach, hospital-based violence intervention, community-based violence intervention, group violence intervention programs designed to reduce group violence in the community. So it's not just law enforcement. Senator DeSteff's bill focuses primarily on law enforcement intervening. This one is broader than that, to be community-based services, public health, and these other agencies that I just mentioned. It would bring the public safety and public health experts at the state and local level together, including the Department of Health, Social Services, Behavioral Health, Development Services, Education, Veterans, to analyze local and state data, to allow state agencies and the state and local agencies and local communities to share best practices and information. And it would administer the Virginia Firearm Violence Intervention and Prevention Fund, which could fund Project Outreach, Operation Ceasefire, as one of several programs that they could. As a matter of fact, the General Assembly, in appropriating funds in the special session, gave DCJS, which is the primary grant awarding agency in this field, they just put out an RFP that would include programs like Operation Ceasefire. So my bill creates a center that is broader in its scope, that holistically looks at the underlying causes of gun violence, and doesn't just say law enforcement and the Attorney General will figure out how to address it, but interagency, collaborative, holistic approach between state and local governments and community-based organizations to address this problem.
Okay, you want people to talk now, or you?
Yes.
Okay, five minutes. Senator Morrissey's got a question before we get to that.
Question for Senator DeSteff.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Morsi.
Senator, your bill is pretty straightforward. It establishes the Group Violence Intervention Board and also the Group Violence Intervention Division. I was all set and prepared to support it. Why can't we roll your bill into Senator McClellan's, which appears to be broader and it would encompass your bill?
Well, I've got some subject matter experts that will stand up and talk about that, but Mr. Chairman, Senator Morsi, if I may, ours truly is the ground up. And when I say that, we are working with nonprofits, we're working with social service providers, working with the local attorneys, we're working with school resource officers, we're working, and again, if you want to take a look at the bill, line 34 through 37, line 19, 20, and 22, we're not just working with law enforcement, we're working with everybody. We're focusing this to the point of where the crimes are happening in those specific neighborhoods. We're not focused just on guns, we're focused on the violent criminal acts as a whole, which include guns. And this bill takes a lot of that off the table. Now, I'd like to, we've got some subject matter experts that can truly answer your specific question, and I'll get out of the way so they can do that. Thank you.
Senator Morrissey, I believe there's a substitute bill to the one that you're speaking about that doesn't include those committees that would slow down the process of implementing these projects.
Senator Morrissey, I suggested that approach to Senator DeSteff before we started, and he wanted to go forward with his bill. But my sense is this committee we ought to take one approach, because while both these bills go in the same direction, they take slightly different approaches, and we ought to take one approach as a committee. This bill will have to go to finance and probably has a long way before it becomes law anyway. So Let's give the people that are for,
Can I provide an answer just
Okay.
really quickly? I think the biggest question is, where do you want the fund? Do you want the fund to be controlled by the Attorney General's office? Or do you want the fund to be controlled by the Department of Criminal Justice Services, who currently provides these similar funds, who is the fiscal agent for federal funds from the Department of Justice, among other agencies to address violence? My bill is broader, and it wouldn't just focus on one type of program, and also includes the research component, the data sharing component, and the collaboration among all of the various state agencies and local governments.
Mr. Chairman, one brief question, if you would indulge me.
Senator Moore.
Senator DeSeth, would you be amenable to the Department of Criminal Justice Services being the financial institution that is dispensing the funds, for lack of a more artful phrase, something that Senator McClellan seems to insist upon in her bill?
Let me confer real quick with my subject matter experts before I answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to make things.
understand.
So the main difference is that we've implemented it, personally, I've implemented it before. I've been the fiscal agent for Project Safe Neighborhoods for almost 15 years. In fact, the U.S. Attorney's Office moved that program to DCGS because I moved there, but I've since left there to go to work for the Attorney General's Office, of where I've managed 3 of these funds in the hundreds of millions of dollars, very successfully, with recommendations from the Department of Treasury and Justice and accommodations on how well we did it with 0 audit points. That cannot be said for DCJS, and no offense to the Secretary.
I take that as an answer that you're not willing to move it to DJS.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Morrissey, yes, we want to follow the subject matter expert who's
Okay.
run it under all the agencies.
Well, then let's give 5 minutes to people that are for Senator McClellan's approach.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Lori Haas. I'm with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We've been working on this type of work for many, many, many years in the Commonwealth. I sit on a task force in the city of Richmond, a youth task force in Petersburg. I've worked with Chief Larry Boone in Norfolk. I've worked in Newport News, all over the Commonwealth to promote a holistic public health approach to resolving gun violence and root causes of gun violence. It is necessary to approach the problem, as Senator McClellan said, with a big picture look. We need data. We need evidence. We need to measure outcomes. When this body sends money to DCJS, to local authorities, to police departments, let's measure the outcomes. Senator McClellan's bill does just that. On Monday, DCJS let a grant solicitation out. In the grant solicitation, monies can go to localities, can go to police departments, it can go to Commonwealth attorneys, and it can also go to community-based nonprofits. In this grant solicitation, it specifically mentions crime solutions, Operation Ceasefire. It mentions gang reduction and youth development, cure violence, group violence intervention, hospital-based violence intervention programs, trauma-informed cognitive behavioral therapy, shooting and homicide review commissions. There's not a single approach that is going to solve the problem of gun violence. And Senator McClellan's bill is the bill that would allow DCJS to fund and staff this more holistic, more multi-pronged approach to solving gun violence. We wholeheartedly support Senator McClellan's version of the bill. It will include Operation Ceasefire. DCJS is already promoting Operation Ceasefire as a method that localities can apply for, get funding for, and implement. So I wholeheartedly support it. I hope that the committee will look favorably on Senator McClellan's bill. And as the vehicle to get this done, it makes the most sense. I know that Senator DeStaff has a commitment to this. I understand his commitment. It's real, and we are appreciative of the commitment. But again, his is a single approach to a large problem. There were 1,025 gun deaths in the Commonwealth last year. 1,025. It's going up. When I started this work 14 years ago, when my daughter was injured by gunfire, we were at 800. It goes up every year. We need a better and bigger and more well-funded approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Who's next?
Chair, Committee, Valerie Slater with the Rise for Youth Coalition and the NAACP Virginia State Conference. We are also a member of the Virginia Community Violence Coalition, and we are in support of Senator McClellan's version of the bill. I'm not going to echo the things that you heard from the previous speaker, but I was going to bring up all of the work that DCJS is currently doing. Rise for Youth is a coalition that spans the Commonwealth, and we work with not just young people, but other organizations and community members who have been impacted by gun violence. And Senator McClellan's bill is going to allow all of those who are closest to the issue to be a part of the solution. And DCJS, as an administrator of the funds, is going to allow for a community to have closer connection to that. It is the Attorney General's office that has just recently disbanded an entire agency that was focused on civil rights. And this is indeed a civil rights issue, and we cannot ignore that. So DCJS is the appropriate place to move this particular initiative forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Okay. Well, the bill's before you, and I think people understand. We're talking about Senator DeSteff's 592. It's on the bottom of page 4, and Senator McClellan's 487. It's up on page 8. They basically take different approaches to the same thing, and the question we've got is what approach we, as a committee, want to take. What I've suggested to Senator DeSteff is that we roll this bill into Senator McClellan's, but he's not interested in that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, again, I'm working with the administration, who DCJS comes under,
Right.
and the AG's office, and they prefer to run this out of the AG's office. I think it would be prudent to give them maybe a minute to respond to some of the information that you just heard, to kind of put some facts out, because you have one gentleman who's run it from both sides.
We've got a bunch of bills, and we've heard both sides of it right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Serville.
thank you. I don't remember the number, but I'll move to PBI, the D-step bill, to try and move this discussion along.
Is there a
All right.
second on that?
I'll second that, but I want to speak to the motion.
Okay.
Like,
Senator Peterson.
Folks, we're headed to an impasse here. I mean, I've got one bill that obviously represents the Attorney General and his approach. I've got one bill that represents, frankly, an administration that's no longer around and their approach. And each one has all the appropriate buzzwords from their side of the aisle. And I just feel like, look, this bill's going to go over. If we send it over, it's going to go nowhere. And, you know, I just feel like we need to have some type of endgame strategy here. And just, you know, putting the words gun violence 22 times in a piece of legislation, we need to, I don't want this to be about branding. It needs to be about solutions. And I just feel like we're going to go right to an impasse here.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Obenshain.
substitute motion to report Senator DeStaff's bill, and if there's a second, I'd like to speak to it very briefly.
Assuming he's going to finance, right?
And go to finance, Mr. Subchairman.
We've got a motion in a second.
You know, I really don't get this. You know, we've got the administration under whom DCJS falls here saying this is where it belongs. And to say that this is some, you know, Republican initiative is crazy, frankly. I mean, this is an Obama program. It is something that has been implemented in Boston, Massachusetts to great success, and in other communities around Virginia and Richmond as well. And, you know, I know that, you know, there are people with a gun control agenda 100% of the time, 100% gun control. And I get it. It's an emotional issue, especially today. The hateful emails I've gotten over the past 24 hours over expressing sympathy for the loss of 2 police officers would, you know, make your skin crawl. And, you know, we've got to find a way to link arms and say that this Obama-era program is one that actually makes sense. And I think that's what the administration and the Attorney General's office here is saying, is, you know, there's something good that came out of that administration, at least one thing.
Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
Speaking to the motion. What we're talking about is not just, is this a Democrat or Republican thing? Should it be at the Attorney General's office? Should it be at DCJS? Is Operation Ceasefire a good program or not? What we are talking about is Operation Ceasefire the only solution to an issue that cuts across law enforcement, social services, behavioral health issues, education issues, community-based organizations? And is it just, are you going to have just a fund that looks at one part of the problem, or are you going to have a fund and a collaborative approach that brings all of those agencies at the state and local government level together to look at the underlying causes of violence? I've already said, if you want this to be more than just gun violence, fine. But I think we can all agree, a majority of the suicides, which are violence, are with guns. And that's part of this discussion we haven't had yet that will be addressed under the program as my bill brings it. This is a process. I am willing to talk to anybody. No one from the Attorney General's office has reached out to me. Nobody from the administration has reached out to me. I'm willing to talk to anybody to get us to a point where we have a center and a fund that works to address violence in Virginia, period. If the vehicle is mine, great. If Senator Steph wants to be a part of it, great. But let's take a holistic approach and not just have a contest over whose turf is it going to be under.
Senator Steph, I think Senator Steph can answer this. I'm just looking up the numbers. I was just 2020. We had 11,300 gun homicides in this country. We've got 330 million people. England, with 58 million people, had less than 100. Why is that? Why did all these, and Western Europe's, they're the lowest, but the nearest to us was Germany with 1/10 of ours. Why is it? What are we doing differently here that we have all these gun homicides that they don't have in the other Western democracies?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Senator Saslaw, and I've got the subject matter experts that can answer this here, but I think what you need to do is look at the total number of homicides and then look at that in a broad spectrum in comparison to the total number of homicides in other like countries. When you look at that, you're going to see similar, very similar on that. And Mr. Chairman, Senator Saslaw, I'd like to just rebut one quick thing from Senator McClellan in a very gentle and kind way. I know the AG's office and the governor's office did in fact reach out because we had talked about that right before, and they explained how many times they had reached out to her office trying to get a message to her to discuss her bill prior to us coming in today, because we don't, the governor's administration, just like us, we don't like to go against somebody's bill without giving them a heads up. And I do know they've reached out to her office multiple times. Again, it's up to the committee which approach they want to take. The administration is going to execute on this how they see fit. I think both approaches are good, but I think it's beyond just gun violence. If you look at the murder rate and you look at the statistics here in Richmond from 2004 to 2008, when you go from 92 to 32, I think that's telling, and that's an approach that we should continue with.
Let's go ahead. We've got a motion to report and re-refer to Finance. Senator DeSteff's bill. If we don't report this, we've got Senator McClellan's bill to take up, okay? So a vote green is a vote to report and re-refer.
Report and re-refer to Finance.
That's right.
Oh, no.
Ayes 6, noes 8, abstentions 1.
Okay, Senator, do we have a motion on Senator McClellan's bill?
Okay,
Okay, is there,
my original motion?
Was your original motion?
PBI.
PBI, is the Steph's bill? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Can
We
you
can't,
just reverse the vote? There was a secondary vote.
there was a primary motion, that's right. To PBI, the Steph bill. Okay.
Just reverse the vote.
Can we just reverse the vote, or do we have to take another
You have
vote?
to. No. Frank Wagner used to just reverse it. You never, didn't have to vote again. Okay, just vote then.
Just vote. Okay, let's just vote.
Fine. Just vote.
A green vote is a vote to PBI Senator Steph's bill.
Speak to your legislative aide or to you, and they said that nobody was
No.
there.
for PBI.
It was at 8:46, I can show you.
We're going back to the primary motion to PBI the bill.
Well, we'll discuss this. What is this?
A green vote is a vote to PBI. Okay, now we have
Ayes
Senator,
8, no 6, abstentions 1.
we have Senator McClellan's 487. Is there a motion on that bill?
Move to report and re-refer to finance.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor of reporting, re-referring to finance, that Senate Bill 487, vote green.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay, that bill is reported and re-referred. Senator Steph, I want to go back to my order if that's all right. Senator Vogel and Senator Donovan are both here. They weren't here before, so we went ahead. Senator Vogel, you're first up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could not run here fast enough.
This is a bill also that has to go to finance if we choose to report it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
323.
I have Senate Bill 323, and this is not a policy that is unknown to this committee. It has to do with the Good Samaritan and Safe Harbor that we have carved out to incentivize people to report an overdose or a medical emergency for somebody who is either involved in an overdose or otherwise some kind of a substance issue. I have advocated for that policy in the past and have been subject to a whole lot of lobbying from folks in the addiction community and in law enforcement. And the addiction community is very divided on this, but there are lots of people, and you have something at your seat that's been distributed from somebody who was going to appear today but could not. And he's been an advocate in the addiction community and believes that this safe harbor that we've created, this immunity that we've created for people who can be at the scene, who are present repeatedly when law enforcement appears at the scene. What we are doing is we are creating an environment where they are never going to be in a position to get help or treatment. And so as a treatment matter, we're doing the wrong thing. And I'm going to just take 1 second and impose on your time and tell you what Chris Herron would have said if he could have been here. And what he was prepared to tell you is that he's a person in long-term recovery and an advocate for treatment. He was struggling with substance use disorder in his teen years, and it continued through college and his NBA basketball career. It took him 14 years to walk away from drugs and alcohol. And during those years, it was a struggle. And he lost everything he worked for and almost lost his family. If it wasn't for treatment and those in the judicial system who allowed him to seek help for the disease, he doesn't know where he'd be today. And he was aware of efforts to do something in the past where we scaled back this safe harbor and this immunity, and instead did what this bill does, I apologize, which is it gives people, it provides that an individual who's subject to arrest or prosecution would be offered a first offender deferred disposition program or judge or drug treatment court docket program rather than full immunity.
So let me ask you right now, so this would reverse the full immunity that's in the code?
It would
right now?
reverse full immunity. It would give you that deferred prosecution if you went, or a drug treatment program. And it was interesting because he had a conversation with Judge Mosier, who is now our Secretary of Public Safety, and said, I'm very disappointed. I wasn't aware that, we had tried this in Virginia and then it failed. And if we ever have a chance to try it again, please, I will come and I will testify, and I care a lot about this. So they've worked on me for a long time, and that is why I'm here.
You had this bill last year, right?
I think I may have had it last year. I don't recall. Did I have it Angie here?
Senate Bill 1344.
Did I have the same bill last year? Or version of it?
It was either last year or 2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago, actually.
Mr. Chair.
Either way, it's a second run, and it was a failure before.
Peterson, then Morrissey.
And I have great respect for Senator Vogel. This was legislation I carried in 2015 when we originally started this Good Samaritan, and Senator Boysko has improved on it. I think Senator McDougal at one point had an improvement on it. I have heard from Commonwealth and police that it does become a safe harbor, that people that overdose again and again and again just are never prosecuted. I do think, it's a fine line. To me, though, that I think we've been so clear in our message saying, if you're in distress, seek help. You will not be prosecuted. To kind of turn that message around at this point would be like turning around a battleship. And if that program doesn't work, I'll take the blame. But I do think we have told people, and I know, my daughter is a freshman at UVA. They get in their in their orientation, if you're in distress, call 911. Do not worry about the consequences. There are no consequences.
That's right.
And it may be the wrong message, but that's the message we've had. And so I'm averse to switching at this point.
Okay. Are there additional questions? Senator Morrissey.
Senator Vogel, would you agree that the media has done an excellent job in getting the message out there that if you are going through the throes of an overdose, and the person that is shooting up with you, for lack of a more artful phrase, sees it, he calls in, neither person would be prosecuted. Would you agree that that is out there?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would, and I think the community has done a pretty good job of telling folks that multiple people at the scene will not be prosecuted.
Further question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Morrissey, but I'd remind you, we've been about an hour. We're going to cut this off in a half hour, and some of these bills have to go to yes, we are, because we have a subcommittee that has to meet. So we have to wrap up as much as we can.
It's got about a minute.
I had legislation pending dealing with the other matter where the person couldn't be show caused. I am concerned about may be offered a first offender. Because the chairman is getting slightly impatient, can you explain the may be offered the first offender? Is there a possibility he or she would not be offered that?
Well, it was not my intention that they would not be offered, but I think you're right. It could be an issue.
Thank you.
Okay. The bill's before the committee. Do you have a motion? It needs report and re-refer to finance. Is there a second on that? Okay, is there a substitute motion? Yes.
Substitute motion passed by a definite.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, the substitute motion takes precedence. A green vote is a vote to PBI the bill. I'd ask you to open the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Senator Donovan, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Yes. You've got 408. It does not have to go to finance, but.
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. 408 is, obviously I'm out of pocket here in front of this committee, but I come to you as a former member of a board in the committee that licensed and held people accountable for their license to tell you a story that I think you already know. In 2020, 5 young women were sexually assaulted in Williamsburg by a massage therapist who had previously been convicted of sexual battery in 2018 in Chesterfield. And, Mr. Chairman, that individual was able to get employed in Williamsburg because when his background check was done, it was determined that he was in good standing with his license. And I was questioned about this situation in my current position and having served on the Board of Medicine before. And as I inquired and investigated, I found out that despite the many times we had summarily suspended licenses, that the boards are not actually informed of any convictions. In fact, the fact that they know this is happening with any of their licensees is only because the members of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office that are counsel for their boards are astute about looking for the information in the media. So I've worked through this bill, Mr. Chairman, to try and not disrupt a process that I understand is complicated for you. And basically, the substitute for this bill, and excuse me for not mentioning that before, there is a substitute for this bill, if I may present it to you.
Is move to adopt the substitute, is there a second? All in favor of the adopting the substitute, say aye. Okay, the substitute's before you. Okay, and the substitute substantially changes what we've got?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chairman. It does.
It substantially changes. I was just trying to.
Yes, in fact, and you can read it with me, in the course of any of the judicial proceedings, if it comes to the court's attention, we're not trying to make this onerous on the court, but in this case, this individual was convicted in an act that was committed in the practice of his license. I mean, this was clear and evident that this could have been reported to the board. So we're trying to make sure that there's no undue jeopardy for the courts in reporting this. And then it lists the three things: felony conviction, crime committed in the practice of your license, and moral turpitude. And so I think it's a really good step forward, Mr. President.
Senator, I'm just trying to figure out the difference that I can see between the bill and the substitute. And the bill required reporting, and the substitute says the court may report.
The bill has been through a couple of different versions, and at one point it was the Commonwealth's attorney, and at one point it was the judges, but now it's may report, it is, and it gives clear indication that there's no jeopardy if it's unknown they're licensed.
Let me ask you, is there any impediment to the court reporting right now if they just may report?
Not to my knowledge, but there's no actual priority for
authority.
them to make it an issue, and I think we probably should.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for the
Why don't we say shall?
why don't we say shall?
I'm in, shall, I'm with you. Yes,
So
this,
moved.
thank you.
That's on line 32. The word may becomes shall. Okay. All in favor of making that change? Aye. Okay, any opposed? Does that raise any questions for anybody? Is there anybody in the audience or the virtual world that needs to be heard on this bill?
And Mr. Chairman, I do have a statement from the victim that I will read very quickly. She's not able to be on. Please do what you can to help this bill. Change is needed. No one should ever have to go through what I did. It's unfortunate for me. I will suffer from this assault for the rest of my life. Although justice prevailed, this should have never happened in the first place. And I know none of us thought the process worked this way.
And tell me, staff, if I'm reading this right, if somebody who's licensed by by multi-state or the Department of Behavioral Health, if they're convicted of a felony or a crime of moral turpitude, and while they're licensed, the court sends a copy to the department or to the licensing authority. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Are there other motions? Any further discussion? Open the roll. All green vote is a vote to report. Okay, Senators,
Ayes 15, no zero.
Senator Steph has another bill at 531. And
Chair, members
it
of
has
the
to go to
committee.
finance as well if it's reported.
Understood. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 531 is a simple bill, and it comes with the endorsement of our law enforcement professionals in Virginia Beach after our last riot. What it does, it gives law enforcement and prosecutors additional tools to prevent violent acts and significant property destruction, and to hold people accountable who use a protest as an opportunity to commit crimes and not be held accountable for their actions. This bill prohibits, bans, limits, discourages, or infringes in any way upon, it does not infringe any way on a citizen's First Amendment right to protest or peaceful assembly. It does not inhibit that whatsoever. What it does do is it holds people accountable for any physical acts of violence, assault, battery, by increasing the penalty from a Class 1 misdemeanor to a Class 6 felony, and if the assault and battery occurred while participating in a riot, and many other crimes in this area. It also protects our public safety equipment and capability to respond to all emergencies, and further elevates the penalties to a Class 6 felony when a vehicle is occupied and actively in service. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what happened in not just Virginia Beach, but in other areas during riot, our last riot down there, our law enforcement vehicles, our first responding vehicles, our ambulances, they were all held up from responding to situations. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is really an accountability and responsibility bill that says you're going to be held accountable for your actions and responsible for your actions. If there's a riot and you're taking advantage of that riot to steal, hurt, harm, or divert law enforcement from trying to do their job or our ambulances and fire. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm happy to answer any questions on this.
Okay, are there any questions for Senator Youssef? Senator Morrissey, I see you with a quizzical look.
Bill, who are you trying to address in this legislation? If a person with the lawful authority to direct a law enforcement agency uses that authority to prohibit law enforcement officers from taking action. In other words, somebody with a law enforcement authority tells law enforcement officers to stand down.
Who is that?
Who was the person that you're directing this to? Is it the mayor or the chief of police?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Morrissey, if a political appointee, a political individual were to go during a riot and tell the police, stand down, you're not to respond to this, and somebody gets harmed, they're held accountable for their actions.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morrissey.
Senator, I agree. Senator, I agree with you. But that person, first of all, should not be telling police officers to stand down. But that person, that political appointee or politician, technically doesn't have the, and to use your words, the lawful authority to direct the police officer to stand down. The mayor of Richmond doesn't have the authority to tell the police officer, stand down and don't prevent that damage to the property. So what's the real efficacy of this bill? Because I agree with the spirit.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Morrissey, it's to hold people accountable for their actions. It's to hold them responsible if during a riot they disengage and there's harm to individuals or property. And we've seen multiple instances of this across the Commonwealth, not just in Virginia Beach or Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. I guess I'll just, since I know we have limited time, I'm not a fan of lines 1 through 80, 184 of this bill, but actually lines 185 to 188, the obstructing the highway, and that being a Class 1 misdemeanor, I actually think that might be getting at something. Is that not already a crime? Or
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, we actually undid that.
We did?
I want to say in 2020 in the special session, I had a bill on this last time where basically you can walk, and I think the example I used was you can walk down the middle of I-66 during rush hour holding a gun, and a law enforcement officer can't come out and say, hey, what are you doing? Get off the road. You're obstructing traffic, and you're creating a threatening, harmful environment.
Okay.
I believe that bill was struck down last year.
Well, that's a bill. If it was a bill, then it wouldn't have been in the law.
Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't. I'm sorry. It was to correct the law, but we, previous in the special session that we were at the Science Museum, we actually, when we changed the law, we took that out. So before, a law enforcement officer, if you were walking down obstructing traffic in the middle of the road for whichever issue, and most of the time when that happens, it normally is a mental health issue, you couldn't go up to that individual and tell them, hey, you're obstructing traffic. Hey, get out of the road. Hey, we made it where the law enforcement officer is not able to do that. And I believe I had a bill on that last year, which was struck down in this very committee.
All right. Is there anyone here is it currently a misdemeanor to obstruct a highway in Virginia?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Senate 46.2818 says no person shall intentionally willfully stop the vehicle of another for the sole purpose of impeding its progress on the highways except in the case of emergency or mechanical breakdown.
And that's a misdemeanor?
No, it's a traffic infraction.
Traffic.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, but a police officer cannot, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, cannot go out and address that with the individual based on what we passed back in the special
Mr.
session.
Chairman.
2020.
Senator Serville.
Sorry, it's actually a Class 1 misdemeanor right now, sorry.
It is a
Okay,
class one.
all right.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Are there additional questions for Senator? Are there people that need to be heard on this bill, either in the audience or in the virtual world? In the Zoom room?
Mr. Chair, there's no one online.
Okay. The bills before the committee, are there motions? If it's a motion to report and refer to finance.
Substitute motion to PBI.
PBI, is there a second for that motion? Is there a second? Okay. The substitute motion takes precedence. A green vote is a vote to PBI the bill. All in favor, vote green.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next.
Ayes
bill-
8, no 7.
Well, Lewis has been there the longest, and then Reeves, and, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me.
And the first one you've got is very simple, it's 7:30.
Yes, sir.
And what that bill simply does is raises juror compensation from $30 a day to $100 a day.
And there is a budget amendment in front of finance on
And
this
if it's,
topic.
if there's a motion on this bill, motion to report, it has to be re-referred to finance.
This bill came to me, Mr. Chairman, from somebody who has worked long in the court system, and I was just completely unaware of the fact that it's been $30 a day for decades, is my understanding. So if you've got somebody who's working in a chicken plant and gets off for a 1 day or 2 day or 3 day jury trial,
And they're making $22 an
Yeah.
hour or something like that.
if that, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the bill.
Is there anybody in the room or in the virtual world that needs to be heard on this bill?
Mr. Chair, there are no hands raised in the
Okay,
Zoom room.
is there a motion on the bill?
Move to
I
report
had a
and
question,
refer.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chairman.
It's, there's a fund for, I think, state money.
Yeah, and I haven't seen,
That's
Mr.
good
Chairman.
finance, if it's reported. Senator Pete.
Mr. Chairman, so do we have any idea, is there, on the financial statement, how much this would?
Yes,
And how much is it?
$5 million.
It's not as much as I thought.
Okay, we have a motion and a
Well,
second.
I will tell you, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we had a heck of a time with finance staff getting our arms around where the money came from and what it would cost. So
Mr.
that's
Chairman.
We have a motion and a second to re-refer to report.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would point out that.
Senator Serville and then Senator Obenshain.
Yeah, I was just also just going to say, the policies we're making is that these jury costs are often assessed against parties who lose or on the criminal side, so just, everybody just needs to be aware of that as well. It's not strictly a taxpayer thing.
Okay, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. Chairman, I would point out that members of this body would probably do well to trade in our jobs to become full-time jurors because we'd make $26,000 doing that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to report and re-refer to finance. Please open the roll. Okay, the bill,
Senator.
I'm sorry. Looks like the bill reports to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank the committee.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Okay, your next bill is 757.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I discussed this with the chair a little while ago. This 757 seeks to modernize, redress, revamp Virginia's fraud statutes to be able to more readily prosecute some complicated fraud schemes. It is comes to me from the Commonwealth's attorney in Norfolk, who obviously has given this a great deal of thought. But it is a heavy lift. It is a heavy lift for this full committee. And what I would like to ask is if the committee would, or the chairman would consider referring this to the Crime Commission for some in-depth study. Oh, I'm sorry.
Move the sub.
All in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The substitute for you is the motion to carry over and do a letter to the crime commission or PBI for the crime commission.
Oh, let's carry over.
Okay, do you have a motion to carry over and do a letter to the crime? Second. Senator Norman.
I realize I'm late to the party, but a number of bills have been referred to the Crime Commission, and before I was unceremoniously relieved of that position, is any kind of accounting taking place as to the bandwidth of the crime commission?
I don't know
to address these?
have we referred a bunch to the crime commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Surville.
I'm on the crime commission. I don't think we've sent them a single bill yet, but I would just note that the crime commission will decide what the crime commission wants to do, and I assume it's going to have some new members pretty soon. And in talking with the House chairman, I think, we're going to have some long discussions about exactly what it's going to do. So, but I just think this is just a referral. It's not binding.
And just by writing the letter, doesn't mean it's going to be studied. It means we're going to ask them to study it. We're going to carry the bill over, and it'll die next December the way the rest of the carryover bills do unless we take them up.
You're very modest in underestimating the strength of your name.
Well, all in favor of carrying the bill over will vote green. Please open the roll. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, thank the committee.
Okay,
Senator Stewart?
Senator Reeves,
Obenshain?
you've got Senate Bill 718, and this is also a bill.
Ayes 14, no zero. My apologies.
I apologize. Thank you so much. 718, turn your attention to Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I brought this bill on behalf of one of my circuit court judges who is here today, Judge Rick Regal from Spotsylvania County. Several years ago, this committee, as well as the House of Delegates, put together the Veterans Treatment Docket. And, Mr. Chairman, I'm here to tell you that that docket has done phenomenally well for our recovering veterans. And at last looked, we had almost a 96 or 99% success rate with those veterans who have gone through that process. And I will tell you, I have spent a day with his team, the veterans that go through that process, what they have to do, and it's a very rigorous process that they have to go through. Judge Regal brought this point to me. It has to do with the automatic revocation of a driver's license from an individual, and I'll let him speak a little bit more to that. He has a remedy for that, as well as a backup remedy depending on the nature of what this committee decides to do. But if we could have Judge Regal come up, that would be great.
Okay. Sure, Judge.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. 718 addresses, let me first say, when we've discovered over the last 4 years in our veterans docket that as many as half of the veterans that come before the court are there for DUI thirds. Now, I've got my theories about why that is, but in the interest of time, I won't go into that. But when they come before the court, they have a third offense DUI. Third offense DUI. So the first part of it refers to the administrative suspension that doesn't terminate until the trial. Now, this is a deferred disposition, so for obvious reasons, when they come into the docket, there's no trial. So they remain administratively suspended indefinitely, and it takes them a year and a half, 2 years to finish our program. It's intense. It's closely supervised. For example, in the first phase, they're supervised. They see me every week for about 12 to 18 weeks, in addition to all their treatment that they have to go through. But the second part about it refers to the automatic suspension. It's a very specific part of 462391B where it says, if the commissioner of DMV, this is part of that parallel authority, that the commissioner has independent authority under the code to suspend license under certain conditions or revoke them indefinitely. So under that, a person who comes before the court on a plea agreement that says, if you complete the program, your charge will be reduced to a second offense. I haven't had one yet that say it's going to be dismissed. It'll be reduced to a second offense, and then you have a certain, whatever the agreement is, a sentence. So when they finish the program, 2 years later, it may be 3 years since they were charged, the commissioner will get a third conviction, the second offense DUI, and at that point, the commissioner will be required to revoke their license as soon as they finish successfully the program. And all this says is that if you get that third conviction, Commissioner, after someone who has completed the Veterans Docket Program, that second offense, if you get that conviction from this court, then you will not revoke under those conditions.
And this is a little bit broader than just the veterans
yes, sir.
Docket. It's behavioral health docket or other specialty docket.
Yes, sir. Drug court, behavioral health, which we're also, Judge Glover starting in Spotsylvania as well. He's applying to the Supreme Court right now.
So at the end of the day, this is really just another incentive for people that are in those specialty dockets to mind their P's and Q's and complete the program.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Does everybody understand? Senator Morrissey.
Mr. Chairman, we have drug courts, criminal courts, and then we have a lesser tier we'll call mental health docket or the behavioral health docket. But this Veterans Treatment Court Program is very much like I want to say, a drug court. And if anybody thinks that it's an easy program to go through, it is onerous. To go through by an analogy, to go through a drug court, you often have to go through sometimes 2 years, maintain employment, get constant supervision as far as drug testing. It's not an easy program. If they successfully complete that, often they're able to get the monkey of addiction off their back. And all you're asking, if I understand, is that it's not a conviction for the purpose of revoking the driver's license. Is that right?
Right, for that third offense
For
within
that,
10
right.
years, that commissioner gets a second offense from me after they finish it, then they're not going to revoke.
Minor
And
concession,
the language could be
Mr. Chair.
changed to say, commissioner, don't revoke, rather than doesn't count as a conviction. That would work the same way.
All right.
Yes, sir. And VASAP, just to give you an idea how rigorous it is, I mean,
not gonna
VASAP
happen.
defers to us when someone comes in, even if they haven't completed it for prior DUIs. So locally, our treatment team will go to VASAP and say, they're in veterans court, and in veterans docket. So VASAP will kind of leave them alone until they finish what they're doing with us, because it's, what they're going through with us is more than sufficient for VASAP's purposes. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Peake.
thank you. Yeah, Judge, how many specialty court dockets are there? So we got drug court, we got veterans court, and I heard mental health court.
Behavioral health docket.
The only authorized specialty dockets are veterans docket, mental health docket, and the drug courts, they kind of stand alone, but they're a similar type of.
And Mr.
They're
Chairman.
a court, we're a docket.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
So this is for DUIs only, correct?
No, sir, it's
Okay.
for any charges. They entered a plea agreement with the Commonwealth's attorney, who was part of our team, and it can apply to any, usually, it's going to be a felony, because, well, it doesn't have to be, actually. It applies to any crime, but usually people don't want to come in when on a misdemeanor.
Chairman.
Well, this was
He's talking about the
Mr. Chairman, I'm talking about
Oh, this
the
code
driver's
section.
license. Yes, the code
Oh,
section.
yeah,
It's
yes.
it's
thought
for
you meant-
third
Oh,
offense.
sorry.
It's for third offense DUIs,
Third offense
correct?
within 10 years, DUI.
And then my question, does
Senator
a
Peake.
third offense DUI would not come under a drug court, would it? So it would be
mental-
veterans? or
A veterans health
They
docket. or
they
no?
could enter on a third offense. We've just found in our veterans court, for some reason, we get a lot of DUIs.
Well, but so veterans and behavioral health mainly, I would guess.
I would say mainly it'd be applied to veterans.
All right.
I don't have the numbers on that, but I would suspect. The drug court, you see a lot of drug addiction. That's primarily.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, does everybody understand the bill? Are the people that need to be heard on this bill either in this room or in the virtual room?
If there's anybody online who would like to speak to this bill, please raise your hand electronically.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, there's no one to speak online.
Okay, the bill's before the committee. Okay, we've got a motion to report and a second. Are there other motions? Is there further discussion? If not, open the roll. A vote green is vote to report.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, ayes
Thank you, Mr.
15.
Chairman. Thank
Bill,
you,
no
Mr.
zero,
Chairman.
the bill's reported. Senator Eben is the next one, but he's not here.
Mr. Chairman, we got an email from Senator Evans' office that he wanted his bill to be continued for the year.
That's right. I did recall that. Senator Evans' bill is one of those bills also that will have to go to finance if it's reported. Well, he wanted it carried over for the year, though. Is that correct? Do I have a motion to carry over Senate Bill 765? Okay, a motion and a second to carry over the bill. Please open the roll. Okay. That bill is carried over. We've got
Ayes
about
15, no zero.
about 10 more minutes before the Criminal Law Subcommittee will start. Senator Peake, you've got 174.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute that is being passed around now. And if I can explain, Mr. Chairman.
You sure can.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Well, hold on a second. Do I have a motion on the substitute? Okay. All in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Okay, the substitute's before you is Senator Peake.
Thank you. Senate Bill 174. The genesis of this bill was actually a law enforcement officer in one of my jurisdictions. I cannot remember which one. He brought it up this summer. And what happens frequently, if you do any domestic work and protective order work, frequently there'll be a fight, there may be some drinking involved, whatever. Somebody will get a protective order. And the protective order will say absolutely no contact via phone, text message, email, etc. And then a couple of days later, they'll see each other and want to get back. And the petitioner may text or email or call the respondent.
But the code is
respondent
silent on that issue. It happens all the time.
happens all the time. Code says nothing about it. And then they call back and then they get drunk and have another fight. And they say, well, he called me. And technically that's a violation. And technically it's a day in jail and a mandatory day in jail. And the judge has no discretion over it. So I had some problems with it in that we did not want it to become a protective order, a reciprocal protective order. So this bill, the way it is amended, places absolutely no protective orders or legal obligations on the petitioner. All it does is say that if the petitioner does contact or instigate or initiate contact with the respondent and he responds back, it's a technical violation, but he can use it as an affirmative defense that the petitioner initiated contact. And what will happen is, so if she texts and says, what about the kids? He responds, I'll pick them up. That's not a violation. It's a violation. He's got an affirmative defense. But the judge can, if he calls back 15 times and goes into stuff that he shouldn't and gets rude, then the judge can say, you blew it.
This bill creates no presumption.
No presumption whatsoever.
It just gives the judge the ability to consider contact by the one who's supposedly protected by the protective
Because the
order.
way it is now, if there's contact of any kind, it's a violation. You get a
Are
day
there
in
questions
jail.
for Senator Peake?
Yeah, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Edwards.
Right now, there's such a thing as a malicious prosecution. That can always be brought if somebody's doing that. That's your way out of it. Malicious prosecution, rather than having this kind of thing, that she called me or whatever it is.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Edwards, the problem is you've already spent a day in jail because you violated the protective order. The judge finds, yes, you violated it. She called you 3 times and you responded once, but you violated the protective order because you were ordered not to have any contact whatsoever. You get a day in jail and then you sue for malicious prosecution.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Edwards.
The idea is to protect women, and that this would discourage people from going to court to get a protective order when they really ought to go to court and get a protective order.
Mr. Chairman, this absolutely does not do that because the protective order has already been taken out. All this does is apply if there's a violation of a protective order. So it has absolutely nothing to do with the reciprocity of a protective order. It's after the protective order is sworn out. If there's an allegation of a violation of a protective order, it just creates an affirmative defense, which can be overcome by too much contact.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Edwards has another question.
Mr. Edwards, I can hardly hear you. Senator.
These issues can be raised in case of a violation anyway, and the judge can consider that.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
Technically, they can't because the statute reads if you violate the protective order, you get a day in jail.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr.
That's
Chairman.
twice today, Senator Norman. It's twice today.
First of all, I have a question with the patron office statement. I heard the Chairman Edwards say that the purpose of the statute is to protect women. I would note I've had a lot of protective orders where the woman was the subject of the order and the man was the one who was on the other end of it. So this is for people, not specific sexes. But beyond that, I would ask the council, why are we putting the affirmative defense in 19.2 instead of with the actual violation, which is 18.2, 60.11, 60.4? I mean, it just seems to me it probably better be put there so people know it's there.
Well, Mr. Chair, there's actually 2 violations when you violate a protective order. One can be a contempt of court, as in the 19.2 section, and the other one is the violation in 18.2, 60.4. That's why the language reads, it's essentially affirmative defense for a violation that's punishable as contempt of court or as a violation of 18.2, 60.4.
That's in, Mr. Chairman, that's in, and Mr. Charles covered that on the last on line 204. He
And the
refers
substitute-
back to the criminal
Are you
statute.
looking at substitute, Senator Servell?
I am. It just seems to me it could be one sentence in 18.2, 60.4 instead of two sentences and two statutes, but it's
And
more
that's
just,
something-
it's more an English drafting issue than it is substance, I think.
Thank you, Charles.
Okay, this is a bill that if it's reported, it has to go to finance. So is there anybody in the audience or in the Zoom world that needs to be heard on this issue?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support or opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised
Okay,
in the Zoom.
we have one of our friends who's,
Hello, Sushila Varkey from Virginia Poverty Law Center. So I had opposed the bill and talked to Senator Peake about it. Certainly this is much better, but I would agree with what Senator Servell said, that this doesn't belong in the protective order statute. And more importantly, I do think the language in the protective order statute can have a chilling effect, as Senator Edwards said, on victims who are both male and female seeking such a protective order. So I still oppose this bill in its substitute form, which I just saw. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Senator Morrissey.
Sure.
You have a question. She has the.
I'm sorry.
Is it you?
Ma'am, pardon me? Yeah. Quick question.
Thanks, John.
How do you respond to Senator Peake's point that it's often the situation, or frequently, or sometimes, that the person who sought the protective order then initiates, sometimes more than once, contact with that other individual, and the person responds to it? Is there any type of defense other than the language set forth in lines 99 through 102, and 204 through 207 that addresses
So-
Senator Peake's
I
problem?
would say our current procedure, our current law, where there are expedited hearings for a motion to dismiss, a motion to revise, a motion to amend, would address that. It is a one-way protective order. A person got a petition, went before a judge, had an affidavit filled out, et cetera, got a protective order. Now, this is the full hearing. The judge made findings. It's a one-way protective order. If the respondent does not want the petitioner to contact him, he may take out a petition of his own. So that's my answer. These are complicated types of situations, and I understand that sometimes petitioners will call respondents after the protective order has been issued. The proper procedure is for the respondent to ask for an expedited hearing, which they're going to get for a motion to dismiss, a motion to amend, or to revise.
Final question. Can you tell me how many times a judge has had an expedited hearing? Have you seen,
Well, all of
in
these
1,000
procedures are
cases where a
supposed to be
protective order is
expedited.
taken out, have you seen one expedited hearing?
Mr. Chair and Senator Morrissey, I think you're asking for anecdotal evidence, and I
Okay,
can't give
all
you
right.
that answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The bill is before the,
Mr. Chairman,
I think it's a good bill.
and Charles brought up a point, and I think if we would take in out, as Senator Servell has requested, we'll put in 18.2, and we'll keep what the line we have, which is H, in this, so that it will be in both bills. So we'll keep
Senator Peake, what I-
99 through 102 will
What I would
remain.
suggest is if the bill is to be reported, it has to go to finance.
Finance.
So between here and finance.
We can
You could
fix
get
that.
together with Senator Servell or anybody you want and come up with maybe different language.
That'd be great. We'll do it.
Okay,
if
the
y'all
bill
put
is,
it out.
the bill is before the committee. Is there a motion? Okay, is there a second on that? Okay, we've got a motion to report and a second. Is there a substitute motion? Is there further discussion? If not, the roll is open. The green vote is a vote to report
Oh, wow.
and refer.
All right, good job, Charles.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Okay, we've got time for one more bill, and that's going to be Senate Bill 561 from Senator Peterson.
All right. And actually, if I could also, at this time, I'd like to strike Senate Bill 208, which was my civil standing bill.
Okay, do we need is that a recorded vote? Okay. Do I have a motion to strike? We've got a motion. Do I second? Okay, a motion and a second to
It
strike that
accomplished its
bill.
purpose.
Yeah.
I liked it too, but I'm going to use Stewart's as a vehicle, the other bill.
Okay, Senate.
Somebody vote for me, okay. Count me as an aye.
There you-
All right,
You're good to vote, sir.
thank you. Oh, there we go.
Okay, Senate Bill
That's
560.
15, no zero.
Okay, the bill is
Thank you.
stricken from the calendar. Senate Bill 561.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is Senate Bill 561, which has not made me a lot of fans out in the state bar community, but and that's fine. You know, I'll take my lumps. They're my friends.
really?
Basically, it introduces a new concept, which is basically bringing in an impartial fact-finding. Effectively, they call it a disciplinary commission. It'd effectively be a jury that would sit on these issues involving attorney discipline. The concern, and I'm trying to summarize what is a lot of testimony down in just a moment, is this idea that the bar will both bring charges and then serve as both the judge and jury in terms of the fact-finding inquiry. And I have a long list of witnesses, and I know we don't have time, but I think let me just take them in order. I have Leslie Haley, who is a 14-year member of the State Bar and Senior Assistant Ethics Counsel and is currently on the Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors as my number one witness, if you could call her up. She's either here or on Zoom. Leslie Haley.
Leslie Haley, are you out there in the Zoom world? Leslie Haley?
Mr. Chair, Leslie Haley is not on the Zoom.
Okay, 0 for 1. Let's go with
What?
Victoria.
That's a good start.
Okay. All right. I also have Victoria Pearson.
Is she in the Zoom?
I don't-
Victoria
who's-
Pearson.
Why don't we just tell me who's on Zoom? Maybe that's easy.
Victoria Pearson.
Victoria Pearson is not on the Zoom.
All right. Why don't you tell me who is in the queue?
Mr. Chair, Senator Peterson, there are 49 people on the Zoom. Would you like me to say each name?
All right. All right. Okay. I have a list of 8 witnesses, and they're not under subpoena, so I can't verify they're here. I also have James Whitener.
James Whitener is on the Zoom, Mr. Chair and
No,
Senator
let's have
Peterson.
James Whitener then. Yep.
We just got people with us.
Mr. Chair, if you just give me one moment.
Okay. 5 minutes total on
Yep.
witnesses.
Mr. Chair, James Whitener is in the Zoom room now.
Okay, Mr. Whitener, let's have it.
James Whitener, would you please unmute? James Whitener, would you please unmute?
Mr. Whitener, going.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, Mr. Chairman and Senators. My name is James Whitener. I'm a native Virginian, born and raised in Portsmouth, and I currently reside in Blacksburg. For 28 years, I was a special agent with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, specializing in major fraud, white-collar crime, and foreign counterintelligence. A few years after retiring from NCIS, I was employed for 4.5 years as an investigator for the Virginia State Bar. I resigned from the Virginia State Bar in part because of the Virginia State Bar's selective enforcement, favoritism to certain lawyers and law firms, and inherent corruption at the VSB. I'm sure many of you are aware of the dubious history of the Virginia State Bar and its efforts to use ethics rules to suppress NAACP lawyers in their fight against massive resistance, as noted in the U.S. Supreme Court opinion in versus Burton in 1963. I was not aware of this dubious history when I began working for the bar, but I came to recognize during my tenure that the bar orchestrated favoritism to certain lawyers and improper punishment of attorneys who dared to zealously defend their clients and challenge the bar in its improper application of its regulatory function. The proposed legislation is a good first step to wrest power from an elite group of lawyers who use the bar as a cudgel against opponents and as a shroud of protection to hide their own crimes and indiscretions. During my tenure with the bar, I watched as they practiced at a minimum selective enforcement, but in reality was a perverse corruption of the legal ethics mission of the VSB, which is to protect the public. It is only in the past few years I have learned of J. Lark's 1995 report describing the inherent conflict of interest under which the VSB operates. They have assumed powers not given to them by the legislature and use these assumed powers to punish and sanction sole practitioners, small firms, minorities, and women. Again, this proposed legislation is a good first step to ending their quiet reign of terror. I have watched as bar councils have allowed the raping and pillaging of the state's.
Let's just move on to the other people.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have, who else you want to call?
Could I, do you have Retta Daniel?
Retta Daniel. Retta Daniel here.
Retta Daniel is here, Mr. Chair, and Senator Peterson.
Okay.
Go ahead. Ms. Daniel, can you do it in 1 minute?
Mr. Chair, if you just give me 1 moment while she's being promoted.
Okay.
Retta Daniels, would you please unmute? Retta Daniels, would you please unmute? It looks like Retta Daniels unable to unmute at this time. Mr. Chair, Retta Daniels is in the Zoom room, but she is not unmuted.
Now, I've unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
I had to find the place to do it.
Can you do it in 1 minute, please?
Sir?
Yeah, go ahead and give you 1 minute.
1 minute?
Yeah.
Start talking.
Well, that's really nice. I have probably more experience with the Virginia State Bar than anyone in your room. I came out of law school in 1977. I went to work for the bar in 1982. I was immediately told to cover up a sexual predator and a cocaine user who was taking cocaine from his client and payment of fee, and the other one was taking sex for payment of his client's fee from the client's wife and wanted a twosome. They were both criminally convicted. Since then, since 1982, I have actively tried to fight the corruption of the Virginia State Bar. That's 36 years now. And I have been a victim of the bar as well, because I was outspoken about their corruption. I have statistics that show what Mr. Whitener just said, that they pick on women, minorities, sole practitioners, and small firm members. And I've got those statistics from the bar. Mr. Whitener has them as well. And therefore, they came after me in 2018. They tried to say that I was impaired to practice law, which I was not proven to be impaired to practice law. So then they suspended me for not giving them 5 years of medical records from all my providers and going to their psychiatrist for an independent medical, as they said it. But I had psychiatrists' expert witness reports that said I was not impaired to practice law. Following that didn't satisfy them.
Your time is up. I'm sorry. I think we get the point. Good.
I think it's important that I finish, sir. I have more experience than anybody in that room.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Chap, who else you got?
Do you have Tony Jackson?
Is Tony Jackson here?
Mr. Chair, Tony Jackson is not, oh, he is. Jackman? Tony Jackman?
Can you do it in 1 minute?
Jackson, I think, Tony Jackson.
Tony Jackson is not in the Zoom room.
Okay. Who else you got, Chap?
Okay, the other one I have is a Jason Anthony, and I'm going to stop there.
Jason who?
Anthony.
Jason Anthony. Is there Jason Anthony?
Oh. That's all right.
No, I think it's important as a victim of that to be able to speak. And as I watch all of you laugh at people.
Chap, do you have another speaker? Somebody wants to, she wants to speak. Does she want to speak, Chap?
I signed up.
Right there.
Oh, okay.
Would you, if you're in favor of the bill, go ahead. Come.
I am in favor.
All right, stand up and speak. Okay.
And I'm in favor of the bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Come up and speak.
Okay, thank you very much,
All right,
Mr.
and what's your
Edwards.
name?
My name's Janice Walt Grenadier, and I've filed several complaints with the
And where
bar.
are you from?
I'm from the city of Alexandria,
Okay,
Virginia.
but you're not a lawyer, or are you?
No, I'm not a lawyer.
Okay.
I have handled my cases pro se, and I've stand in front of you all before and been laughed at. And I find it extremely disgusting. The bar and the jerk both
We'll give you.
have violated so many
We'll give you
people's
30
rules.
seconds, okay? Go-
Thank you
We've heard
very
you
much.
before.
So from my experience is that the Virginia State Bar, the ethics guru, Mr. McCauley, said he wouldn't meet me in Richmond. He would only meet me in a bar in Arlington. And then he had me mail all of my information regarding the fact that lawyer Alona Grenadier Heckman was stealing out of a trust fund for Sonia Grenadier,
Yeah, okay.
the mother
Listen,
of Judge
I
Albert
think we've heard
Grenadier.
enough. That's enough. Thank Chappie, you
So
have
we
anybody
do
else?
need change, and I appreciate it.
Nobody, Chap has nobody else. Anybody would like to speak against the bill?
Yes, sir.
Jay?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the committee for providing the Virginia State Bar with the opportunity to be heard on this important matter pertaining to the regulation of Virginia's lawyers. And Champ, as an old friend, I should say, Senator Peterson, do not fear, you will continue to be a friend of mine. My name is Jay Myerson. I am the president of the Virginia State Bar, and on behalf of our over 30,000 members and the VSB Council, I address the committee to voice the VSB's firm opposition to this bill. We oppose 561 because it will, number one, uproot hundreds of years of self-regulation of the profession at great cost to create the first in the nation legislative attorney disciplinary commission, based on what we would submit is little discernible rationale. Number two, provide less protection to the public from lawyer misconduct. And number three, provide less transparency with at least the appearance of potential political considerations in decision-making, thus undermining Virginians' confidence in the lawyer disciplinary system and profession. Let me underscore, this disruption would occur with little discernible rationale despite the stories we just heard, the proverbial solution in search of a problem. It is important to note that my remarks today reflect not only the position of the VSB, but I can represent that the Virginia Bar Association, the Virginia Trial Lawyers Association, the Virginia Women's Attorneys Association, the Old Dominion Bar Association, and the Virginia Association of Defense Attorneys all oppose this bill. You have been provided with copies of a uniform letter signed by the presidents of each of those organizations. They're with you right now. Additionally, you have a list of former VSB presidents who are all of them living, and they're the ones that we still have who are not judicial officers, all of whom are in opposition to this bill. Moreover, it is worth noting that the VSB is completely unaware of any concerted opposition to the lawyer discipline system as currently constructed. Some have argued that the disciplinary system is tilted in favor of bar counsel over accused lawyers, or that the disciplinary system favors bar counsel. Several facts dispel this contention. Facts are difficult things and ornery things. They just sort of hang out there. First, in fiscal year 21, for example, 81% of complaints were dismissed without reaching the investigative stage, and often without the accused lawyer's knowledge. Of those remaining, only 5% of the complaints received resulted in the imposition of a public sanction. Consequently, the overwhelming majority of lawyer complaints are perfunctorily dismissed or addressed privately, usually because the allegations fail to allege an ethical violation. As to allegations of coziness between bar counsel and the disciplinary board, every accused lawyer has the option to choose a 3-judge, circuit judge panel in lieu of the volunteer members of the disciplinary board. Yet over the past 5 years, by an average of a 4-to-1 margin, accused lawyers have opted to have their cases heard by the disciplinary board. Furthermore, over the same 5-year period, the disciplinary board was just as likely to dismiss the charges against the accused lawyer as were the judicial panels. There are advocates for change. If the advocates for change to the lawyer disciplinary system, if they truly wish to seek reform, we encourage constructive criticism through identification of specific instances of apparent shortcomings. The VSB Standing Committee on Lawyer Discipline is an appropriate starting point. Its meetings are accessible to the public. Its members are of open mind and good faith. They're both attorneys and lay people. The VSB regularly revisits and, as appropriate, recommends changes to the procedures to the Virginia Supreme Court, which is ultimately the final decision maker on the disciplinary rules. As recently as last summer, respondent-conscious revisions were recommended and adopted by the Virginia Supreme Court. In conclusion, the bar respectfully asked the committee to reject this bill and its radical and unprecedented departure from vesting lawyer discipline in the judiciary and from Virginia's long-standing practice of permitting professions to engage in self-regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else against the bill? Yeah. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, members
Yeah.
of the committee, Alyssa Padden with the Office of the Executive Secretary. The court system opposes the bill for the reasons already stated by Mr.
Supreme Court
Myerson.
opposed the bill. Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Palmer on behalf of the Virginia Bar Association. I would, in addition to the comments by Mr. Myerson, I would add that the legislative branch is vested with legislative powers, and I don't believe that oversight of a profession would fall within legislative powers, that the General Assembly is
Am
under
I
the
correct
Constitution.
that we have a tradition in Virginia that professions govern professions? Doctors govern doctors, nurses govern nurses, lawyers govern lawyers, right?
Pursuant to the requirements that have been set out by the Supreme Court, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks. Next.
Mr. Chairman, Reese Wilkes on behalf of the Virginia Creditors Bar Association, which is made up of attorneys barred in Virginia. We join in the opposition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Does anybody else want to speak against the bill? All right, Chap, you have anything else you want to say?
Well, I think it's unprecedented I've been able to bring these organizations together, so I'll just leave it at that.
You're a good lawyer. You brought them all together.
Not easy. Wasn't easy.
Okay, is there a motion? Is there a second? All in favor of the motion to pass the bill by indefinitely? All in favor vote aye, all opposed vote no.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I actually have the wrong bill up. I hit the wrong button. Pardon me.
Okay. We're going to redo this? Okay. Pass the
Yes, sir,
bill
Mr.
by
Chair.
indefinitely. Vote aye if you're in favor of passing it by indefinitely. Vote no if you want to. Yeah, it's still on the board. Which?
Yes, sir. Senator Norman, Senator Deeds. Ayes 12, noes 3.
12-3, the bill is passed by indefinitely. All right, next bill, where are we? Are we done? Okay. Okay. Okay, we're going on to the criminal sub. Yeah, all right. The committee, Senate Judiciary Committee is adjourned.